particularly in the face of
such a big change,
such a huge new technology. I like to look at newspaper articles from the early days of new technologies, like the early days of the PC or the early days of the internet. Remember, people used to call it the information superhighway?
Yeah.
And it would just predict how everything was going to change. And a lot of those predictions are wrong. So I think it's very important that we have a theory of what's going to happen. I also think it's really important, both as like builders of technology and policymakers, we have a lot of humility and responding to the real world implications. I think in the face of a technology like the automated teller machine, you might think, okay, well, we're not going to have people at bank branches anymore. No, there's actually more bank branches and more people at those bank branches. And it has nothing to do with distributing cash. Someone, I don't know which bank, realized, hey, if we put other people in those bank branches, we can grow faster than our competitors. And sure enough, that's what happened. I think in the face of a new technology, we often simulate our current lived experience with that new technology present. But we don't simulate the natural state of competition. And so I think we need to approach this with a great deal of respect for how powerful the technology is. But I also think it's a different type of naive to say, well, all these jobs are just going to go away. I don't think that's just the way the economy works. The way I think about this technology is it's going to change the way we work. I always like to think about the lived experience of an accountant before and after Microsoft Excel. It's a totally different job, right? Imagine punching numbers in a calculator and writing them in a physical spreadsheet. Half your job is typing numbers into a calculator. Now you don't even think about the math. You're making models, equations in a spreadsheet. It doesn't mean that the job of balancing the book is any less important. So I think we're going to have a very significant change to a very significant number of jobs, particularly in the world of sort of white-collar information work. And I think that's a little scary. Think about when you're sort of at the peak of your experience in your career, 50 years old, you've been in the same career for a long time. That's the point where you should sort of be at the you've honed your craft. Imagine being the proverbial accountant in Microsoft as Excel was invented right then, and you have to learn this new thing. That's really disruptive. I think it's one of those things where the practitioners of AI need to be very accountable for the impact of the technologies that we make. But I also think it would be a mistake for as a society to look at it just through the negative impact. And I think we should be really thinking about how to we maximize the democratizing effect of the technology. The thing I think for both companies and individuals, I think is probably the most important attribute right now is resilience and flexibility. I think if you go as a company and you have a 10-year plan, it's silly. No one can predict 10 years from now. What you need is the agility and the open-mindedness to respond to the world as we experience it, because I think no one is going to appropriately and correctly predict the second and third order effects of AI. And so you need to be the person in your job and the company that can respond to that as more quickly than your peers. And if you are, I think you can really benefit from this technology.
So we both have kids. And a question I get asked all the time is what do you tell your kids to do? And you talked about resilience. I often describe it as we need to be incredibly curious. For those with kids, how do you think about this in terms of what should they be looking at, what they should they be studying?
There was this adage from my parents, which is, a lot of education is learning how to learn.
I say the same thing.
It felt trite, but there is, I think, something really meaningful to that now, where I think some vocational training will be less useful because if it's learning how to use a software tool that will be obviated by some new technology in 10 months, that feels like the type of education that could be risky, where you could invest in that learning and then not get the return on that investment. But learning how to be a critical thinker, learning how to think about, if you think about the engineers at Rivian, physics and the fundamentals.
Asking why.
It's because if you're a new grad, it's way easier if you can say, I can learn these tools. And I think you really need to go in with that sort of plasticity, that open-mindedness, and learning how to learn, asking why.
This is true not only for our kids, but for us as adults. Being highly flexible in our thinking is so critical.
Absolutely. Was it okay?
What did you guys think about it?
I enjoyed it. I thought we did a good job.
I agree. I could have talked about the robotics thing forever.